Good to have you both here with us. Jonathan, let's kick it off with you. I mean, do you think we're going to see Congress work out something before that August 2nd deadline?
I think we are, because they're playing with a nuclear weapon.
Mm-hmm. Which is what you write about.
I mean, they really don't have any alternative, and we haven't been in exactly this kind of situation with the debt ceiling in the past, where it came right down to crunch time. So I think responsible people in both parties recognize that they have to get some kind of a deal done within about the next week or so.
Maya, do you see it that same way? Because we're getting awfully close. August 2nd is not so far away from here.
Well, this is quite a roller coaster ride, and it shouldn't be, because we should have lifted the debt ceiling already, well in advance of when we have to. I, too, think that we'll get it done by that August 2nd deadline, but I'm not 100% certain, and that in itself is a problem, because markets could get uncomfortable even before August 2nd. Mm-hmm. We wanted to get this done as quickly as possible, but we also do want to have budget reforms as part of the overall deal.
But do we get that, or do we get a mini deal and then we get to that later and we kick the can down the road again, Maya? What do you think?
It's interesting. There are a couple different models. You could see a temporary increase where they fill in some of the details later. You could see sort of the so-called down payment, where they deal with some of the easier parts of the budget but punt the harder ones, entitlements and taxes, till after the election. Or what I'm hoping for is a big grand bargain where they put in place the mechanism to fill in about $4 or $5 trillion in savings before the year is over. If we push this past the election, it risks becoming even more politicized.
Jonathan, I love your column, because you talk about the Walker plan. David Walker, we had him on earlier today, and you talk about, an automatic default mechanism, that we have something in that. Talk to me about why you think that's so important.
These are triggers and caps that were used in the 1990s through the Graham-Rudman-Hollings process that you might recall. Mm-hmm. And what this would do is it would say, look, we're all committed to the same general principles here, which right now seem like there'll be $4 trillion in total savings at about a 3-to-1 ratio of budget cuts to revenue increases. How you get there, a lot of which they will leave up to the Congress. But if they don't get there by a particular date, and this is the way this fail-safe trigger works, then sometimes...
Pay as you go, essentially, like we...
No, it's not quite that. It's that if they don't get to these targets by a date certain, which they believe will be mid-2013, then there are draconian automatic cuts and tax increases. And so what essentially happens is they say to the Congress, you do this or it will be done mechanically in a way you don't like later on in the process. And they think that that will concentrate the minds of both parties after the election to do some of these other things. But they've got to put this down payment down. If they don't have some immediate cuts that are locked in, it won't be credible for the markets or for either of the parties.
Jonathan, let me ask you about the Walker plan. Does it include some kind of reform of the tax code? Obviously, Republicans don't want to see taxes increased. Right. A lot of Democrats don't want to see increases in actual tax levels, absolute levels either. But you could increase revenue by taking out ethanol subsidies or subsidies for corporate jets, for example.
Yeah, you're going to see some of that short term, and then more of that, a more fundamental reform of the tax code in the medium term. I think any accountant out there who thinks that things are going to stay the way they are is mistaken. So the question really will be whether it's almost a linguistic matter right now. John Boehner just told the Republican caucus this morning in private that there will be no tax increases. He did not say that there will be no elimination of tax loopholes or elimination of so-called tax expenditures. So what everybody agrees on is that marginal tax rates are not going to go up. But a lot of people who've been benefiting from these deductions and exemptions over the years are going to face a reckoning.
Maya, do you think that Republicans are going to have to give in there? Carol and I were talking to Marsha Blackburn last week, and she was saying they won't budge on any tax moves, no changes at all to the U.S. tax code. Is that ridiculous?
Or just posturing, you guys?
Well, I think right now the fiscal problems that we face are so large. In the end, there's no way we're going to get this done without revenues being part of the solution. That's clear. But I don't think they're going to come into play in any major way until the real entitlement reforms are on the table as well. And that's to Social Security and Medicare. The grand bargain is about bringing entitlements and tax reform together. And when we do that tax reform, it's not just about corporate jets and ethanol and the things that are easy to point fingers at. It's actually really looking at the full $1 trillion in tax breaks that we have per year in the tax code, sweeping them out, bringing down marginal rates and using some of that additional revenue to help close the fiscal gap, because that's a fundamental tax reform that would actually be good for the economy, simplify the tax code, and help the budget situation. But I don't think that's going to be a big part of it until we really tackle entitlements. That's the central piece of all of this.
It's not clear that they will bring down marginal tax rates for individuals, but what is clear, Carol, is that there are the outlines of a deal that we just saw over the weekend. Bill Clinton out in Aspen was asked a question at the Aspen Ideas Festival and said that he thought it was reasonable for the corporate rate to come down to roughly 25%. The Wall Street Journal editorialized in the last couple of days, representing the Republican side, that if there were a reduction in these corporate rates, because they're not competitive now internationally, they're on the high end, even though the actual rate for a lot of companies is
actually
zero.
gets a lot lower,
I mean, GE pays zero, right?
Right.
But internationally, it's not competitive. So the Journal said, in exchange for those corporate rates coming down, they think it would be fair to get rid of a lot of these $1 trillion in ridiculous tax exemptions and tax breaks. So that's the outline of a deal. Reduce the corporate tax, eliminate a lot of these things that pockmark the tax code. Obviously, the Ways and Means Committee and the lobbyists, they're not going to like this.
Right.
So part of the question is whether the Congress will be able to swallow some of this if the leaders make this deal.
And if they have the backbone to do it.
But I think we should be clear that it's going to go farther than that when they do the full deal. It might not be part of the debt ceiling, but if you look at what the Fiscal Commission, the Bowles-Simpson Commission recommended, they put out a plan that had revenue-neutral corporate tax reform but brought the rate way down and got rid of the tax breaks. But they did the same thing on the individual side. And if we clear out those tax breaks there for individuals, you can get the rates down, and I think that will be part of the grand bargain.
You know, in an ideal world, this all sounds good, but I mean, how likely is it? We've been talking about these issues for years. I mean, Jonathan, how likely is it? I mean, everything you say makes complete sense. What you're saying, Maya, makes sense, but yet we've been here before, and we can't seem to get this done.
Well, you know, it did get done in 1986. The deal that Maya was talking about was basically done then. But feelings have hardened. The political climate is more poisonous now.
We're very polarized.
You have, Grover Norquist has gotten basically all of the Republicans to sign this tax pledge and threaten primary challenges against them if they budge or don't do what he says. He, by the way, is described by Alan Simpson as the most powerful man in America. So everybody's going to have to give a little bit. And either side that says, no, we're not giving on our side, they're irresponsible. So I think for those of us who are watching this, the test should be, is everybody willing to sacrifice something? If they dig their heels in and say no, like Marsha Blackburn you were talking about, those people have no place in this debate, to my mind.
And
10 seconds.
I think the other test is don't say what you're not going to do. People have to talk about what they are willing to do. It's going to take all parts of the budget, and we know that it's not going to be promising not to touch Medicare, Social Security, taxes. Those are the kinds of things we have to be talking about.
Everything's got to be on the table at this point. Got to leave it there. Maya MacGuineas, Jonathan Alter, thank you both so much. We appreciate it.